Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I am excited to be here today. I'm excited about the topics that we will be learning about this week, and I want to jump straight into our lecture. So, today we're going to be talking about employee well being and career development. Okay, and this is essentially two different chapters in our textbook. So, your corresponding reading should be chapter 11 for employee well-being and chapter 12 for career development. Okay. So employee well-being, we hear that term thrown around a lot, especially lately, I would say, in these pandemic times. And the way I like to think about employee well-being is kind of twofold. So there's one aspect of employee well-being that includes employees' physical health and safety. And so that is literally, are they well? Are they sick? Are they hurt? Are they injured? Are they whole? Are they broken? Right? So that's the physical health and safety piece of it. And then the other piece of employee well-being is the mental and emotional health. And so, are employees burned out? Are they stressed? Are they healthy from a mental and emotional aspect? Okay. And those two things put together is what I would call employee well-being. And often when we have physically healthy employees as well as mentally and emotionally healthy employees, that's where we're going to see individual performance really shine. That's when our employees are going to do their best. Okay. And so when employees have poor employee well-being, whether that be from a physical health and safety aspect or from the mental and emotional side, we see these kinds of outcomes. We see them making poor decisions on the job. We see them being less productive. Occupational safety is lowered. They have lower quality relationships in the workplace, and relationships are very important, especially for engagement and retention. We see impaired communication, whether that's verbal or even written communications when they're not when their well-being is poor. Reduced performance for sure, as well as higher health costs. And so you think about that from an HR and benefits perspective. Health costs can be very expensive for our organizations. And so there is some incentive for organizations to be invested in lowering our individuals' health costs. Now, from an individual standpoint, employees can actually improve their own well-being by kind of playing this balancing act between their time, their energy, their performance, and their emotions. So let's walk through that. When I say time, I'm talking about how employees split their time between work and non-work and leisure and enjoyment, right? And family and friends. And well-being is tied into how people spend their time, because what we see is that when people have an unbalanced, unsatisfactory split of time between leisure and work, then their well-being tends to decrease, right? And so if we don't have opportunities to spend with our family and our friends outside of work, then we tend to see the mental and emotional sides of well-being decrease. Okay. And I would argue too, if we spend too much time at work, we might see physical health decrease too, because that means we're not active, we're not, depending on our job, we may not be getting outdoors enough, that kind of thing. Okay. So that's one lever that we as individual employees can pull in order to support our own well-being. Another lever that individual employees can pull is this idea of energy, right? So time is one thing, energy is another. Okay. So how much emotional energy does your job require? How much emotional energy does your leisure activities, your family activities? How much do those pull from you? And so there are people that will argue that just like time is a finite resource, often we see energy for a lot of people is a finite resource. And so our well-being can be supported when we're spending our energy in the ways we want to. And key to that is we're not completely depleting ourselves of all energy due to our jobs. Okay. Performance is another one. That's another lever you can pull. So a lot of us are type A overachievers. Okay. So performance means everything, every time. I give my I give everything I have to this project. I give everything I have to this project. I give everything I have to this, outside activity. I give everything I have to this nonprofit organization that I volunteer for. I give everything I have to, going to the gym 7 days a week, twice a day, whatever it is, right? So performance becomes a lever because when we can start to think about the fact that we don't have to be perfect in every single thing that we do, we can choose the things that we want to perform exceptionally on and choose the things that, an okay performance will do. And that is going to support well-being when we don't feel like every performance has to be 100%. And just recognize, for those of you that maybe struggle with that idea, that is an option. You don't have to perform 100% on every single thing that you do. Pick and choose, especially if you're low on time and or energy, or you can feel the drain on your well-being. Okay. And then the last lever that I would suggest as individuals where we can support our own well-being is emotions. Okay, so there are a lot of people that are emotionally wrapped up in the work that they do, and maybe for good reason, depending on what that work is, right? But when we can start to pull some emotion out or put more emotion in, depending on what your current kind of well-being status is, that's another lever we can pull in order to support our own well-being. So for some of us, it may mean putting more emotion into, our work or our family affairs or our volunteer activities, whatever it is that we're trying to balance in life. And for some of us, it may mean pulling some of the emotion back because maybe that's draining our energy or draining our time and that kind of thing. Okay. So I would suggest to you that as individual employees, those are 4 areas, 4 things that you can potentially negotiate or change in order to support your own well-being. Okay, I like to always give ideas for us as individuals before I move onto the organizational side. Okay, so now let's look at it from the organization side. Why should companies care about employee well-being? I'm going to argue this first one might be most important. Okay, it is humanistic to care about people as individuals, including their well-being. So I think it is a humanistic approach in order to care for people's physical health, their safety, their mental health, their emotional health, right? Too often we can see people being treated more mechanistic. So that would be the opposite of humanistic, treated as machines, as just tools of productivity. The humanistic side of it really requires companies, organizations to care about employees' well-being. Okay, so I'm gonna argue that that's most important. But then we see some other measures here on this slide that kind of fits into a lot of the more normative thinking about what HRD cares about. So it can reduce worker compensation costs, because remember we talked about safety being an important aspect of well-being. It can reduce tardiness, absenteeism, turnover, which means, people leaving their jobs voluntarily. It can improve employee morale, loyalty, creativity, productivity, decision-making. It can also, companies that care about their employee well-being have a higher or more impressive company image. And so we know those companies that we think care about their employees, right? And we know the ones that we say they don't care about their employees. I don't know, Walmart comes to mind right now. I don't know if that's still the narrative, but in the 90s, early 2000s, that was certainly the narrative about Walmart employees, is that the company didn't care about their well-being, right? And so who wants to work for a company that has an image where they don't care about their employee well-being? Pretty much no one, right? So that can actually be a very positive things for organizations in terms of attracting and recruiting new employees, as well as maintaining the ones that they have. Okay, so those are just reasons that companies should care about employee well-being. Now, we talked about how as individuals we can negotiate or manipulate our time, energy, performance, and emotions. From an organization side, this is where we see organizations being able to support employee well-being, okay? And so it may be through the actual characteristics of the job. So how much autonomy are people given? How much flexibility to, or latitude for creativity are they given? How much is everything mandated in their job that they do it a certain way, that kind of thing. So the characteristics of the job can actually support employee well-being if there's a good match between the characteristics of the job and the employees' values, preferences, and that kind of thing. We're actually going to get into that a little bit later when we talk about career development today. Okay, so job characteristics can actually support employee well-being. Supervisor support has been shown to be very important. Supervisors that support their employees from a well-being standpoint, keeps them safe, is cognizant of their mental and physical and emotional health. Those sorts of things are very important because those supervisors can create an environment within the workplace, within their little section there, that can improve employee well-being for those employees. Okay, job resources, which we'll talk about in just a minute, can also support employee well-being. Okay, personal resources as well. Okay, so maybe that is things like access to childcare, access to healthcare and practitioners, those sorts of things. Okay, work-family boundaries. What's important here is that it kind of goes along with supervisor support, but organizations recognize that people exist as full holistic people. Okay, I say work family here, but you could also think of it as work and non-work, or work and leisure. But anything outside of work, recognizing that for a lot of employees, it's really important that there are some boundaries between their work and their non-work selves, their lives. And organizations that can support that can also support employee well-being. Okay. And then the final thing on this slide is all about relationships. We know that having strong, supportive, positive relationships in the workplace can really improve or support employee well-being, because it becomes then a place where maybe they feel accepted, maybe they have a sense of belonging, maybe they know somebody's got their back in the organization, that kind of thing. So relationships and finding ways to support and grow relationships among employees can also support their well-being. Okay. So in our textbook reading, chapter 11, there were a few more specific ideas in terms of interventions that organizations can rely on in order to support employee well-being. So kind of touch on those real quick. The first one being this idea of employee counseling. And our textbook author offers this idea that it really is just another HRD intervention where we kind of see this process play out, where we identify what is the issue, what is the problem, problem, and we work through what we know to get to a solution, to get to an intervention, and then that follow-up piece would be kind of like an evaluation phase to see how everything worked. Okay. And so this idea of counseling really is just that people in the organization are supported by counselors, people who have been trained to help them meet their needs for physical health, mental health, emotional health, right? And safety. Okay. And a lot of times we see this employee counseling kind of wrapped up in what we call an employee assistance program. And the employee assistance program is really just it's almost like an umbrella around things like counseling, things like psychological assessments. An employee assistance program also allows for referrals. So if employees are having problems or their with their well-being, whether that be physical, mental, or emotional, they can actually be referred to other services for specialists who can help them on an individual level in terms of increasing their well-being through various interventions. Okay. Our book also talks about stress management being an important component of well-being, and the book offers this particular framework, which I thought was a good way to think about all of the ways that individuals as well as organizations can help reduce employee stress. And there is an inverse relationship between employee stress and employee well-being. So when stress goes up, employee well-being is going to decrease. If we can start to bring that stress down, the hope then is that well-being will increase, okay? Or at least be supported in some way, okay? So on an individual level, some of the interventions introduced by this model would be things like meditation, exercise, relaxation techniques, cognitive approaches. So really thinking about how to in ways that can reduce your stress. Okay. Goal setting and time management as individual interventions that can help reduce stress. And then from an organizational side, we have the organizational structure. So who reports to whom in the organization can help reduce stress. I think about like for managers who have, 40 people reporting to them, if we do some shifts in the organizational structure and now they have 18, think what that could do for their own stress management, right? As well as the people reporting to them. So the organizational structure can contribute to stress management. Job design certainly can. How many of us in our jobs are actually doing the job of 2 or 3 people, and job design is all about what tasks and responsibilities reside with each position. Okay. And so in an organizational effort where we really focus on what are the most important tasks and responsibilities for each job, can help, first of all, give clarity to the person in that job on what he or she or they should be focused on. Okay. And it also brings clarity to what the person next to them should be doing. So they have a better idea of how they need to interact in order to get things done. So job design can help reduce stress management. Selection and placement programs, just thinking about getting the right person in the right job is what that's all about. Certainly the working conditions. How many people do we know where their job, just the place that they work, just brings on stress, right? Whether it be because it's, a high pace environment, whether it be because it's toxic or too political or whatever the case may be. the actual working conditions can make a difference in stress. And then finally, training and development can also be an intervention to help reduce stress. And that is literally, think about training and development as an organizational intervention where we are actually teaching people how to do things like meditation and relaxation techniques and stuff like that. Can definitely help with the reduction of stress, or the management of stress. Okay. And so anyway, I thought this particular model gave us a good idea of what could be considered an individual or organizational intervention and how those might be able to reduce or manage stress. Okay. Again, if we can manage stress, we can support well-being. And then this last one here, employee wellness programs, y'all. This is so near and dear to my heart. If you know me, you know I am a group fitness instructor, and I have a lot of people that I know that actually go into these Fortune 500 companies, you know, right here in downtown Houston, and they do exercise classes, you know, at lunch breaks, or they do like I can't think of another word, but like I don't want to say brown bag lunch, but a lunch and learn. There we go. A lunch and learn about exercise fitness or that sort of thing. So we're seeing more and more companies bring that kind of stuff in, especially after COVID, where it became very obvious that we needed to do more for employee well-being. So we see exercise and fitness interventions right there in the organization, or even giving employees access to gyms and that kind of thing, or education about exercise and fitness as well. Things like smoking cessation program. I remember those being really big when I was younger. I don't hear as much about them because I don't hear as much about people trying to quit smoking as I used to. But that is certainly an employee wellness program that could support well-being as well. Nutrition, weight control interventions. Think about these companies that sponsor like Biggest Loser competitions. Even right here at was it at U of H? There's some companies I know that give like memberships to things like, or have like a group. What's it called? Like Weight Watchers. I think they changed their name to WW, but some of those kinds of companies will be an organization or partner with employers to bring that program to their employees, that kind of thing. There's also certainly an education or training component in nutrition and weight loss control interventions as well. And then hypertension screening and control. You know, companies that are hosting health fairs where people can get their blood pressure taken and screened for diabetes, even things like that, are all part of employee wellness programs and all can contribute to the well-being of our employee. And if you think back to one of the benefits to employers for improving well-being, that whole reduced health costs thing, this is where the employee wellness program is really where we can move the needle on that, right? And so one of the things I want you to think about is, what is our role in all of this as HR professionals, right? So a lot of us don't necessarily have expertise in these particular wellness programs, or even in the interventions that I talked about on the previous slide for stress management, or in employee counseling. So think about, what is our role? What role do we play in these programs and interventions as HR professionals? And that's one of the questions I want you to kind of jot down a few sentences to answer that in your lecture notes for this week. Okay. Another question that we have to contemplate and we have to think about is employee well-being an HRD responsibility? I'm always going to argue yes. And what I see in the research side, as well as on the practical side in our organizations, is that more and more HRD research, HRD practice is becoming more concerned with employee well-being. Because the thing is, how can we even begin to think about performance, whether that's individual performance, team performance, organizational performance, if we're not taking care of our employees, if our employees are not well, right? And so you say, well, is it our responsibility to make sure the employees are well? Well, the truth of the matter is that we have probably, as employers, a bigger stake in whether or not they're well or not. And so they spend so much time as our employees in the workplace that it becomes the prime place to think about supporting well-being. I'm going to argue too, is one of the places where employee well-being, where well-being is damaged. Let's say that. Okay. Workplaces where we may not have as much support as we do at home. And so if it's a place where we can potentially damage well-being, then I feel like it becomes the responsibility of HRD to support well-being in order to either reverse or avoid that damage. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Maybe some of you can put that in better words in your lecture notes. Okay. And then my last question to you that I want you to ponder here. What if we offer it, but employees don't use it? Right? Think about that from an economic standpoint, right? We as an organization are bringing in outside programs, weight loss programs, exercise and fitness challenges, we're contracting with counseling services. We're doing all this work. We have a whole EAP, our whole employee assistance program built around our employees. What if they don't use it? Do we continue to offer it? Do we package it differently? Do we find out why they aren't using it? Do we find out what needs they have that maybe we aren't meeting in other ways? Right? So let me know. What do you think about that? What if they don't use it? What do we do? Okay. And what does that mean? Okay. All right. So here's our overview of a chapter 11. I kind of talked through that. It feels fast, but I realize it's been almost half an hour. So employee well-being, we have the HRD aspect of it, the HRD thinking of it is to some extent our responsibility for that. And we do see benefits on a performance level from supporting well-being, okay? And ways that we do that through employee counseling, through employee assistant programs, through stress management interventions, through employee wellness programs, and through health promotion programs, like the smoking cessation, okay? So that's chapter 11 in a nutshell. There's lots more details that you can read about in your book. And I do want to hear some examples from you. I want to hear your thoughts on some of the questions that I posed here. So feel free to jot those down in your lecture notes. Okay.